babies.
I didn't even put. It's shocking to me that I'm going to remember to say welcome to the show. If you're on YouTube, sorry, not a good day for us. If you're watching on YouTube, if you're listening on iHeartRadio, we're the #1 New England sports show on the iHeart there. So congratulations, thus iTunes. We are the self-proclaimed New England #1 New England sports show, and anywhere else you get podcast, rate, review, subscribe, tell your friends, and as always, tell your mothers. Where's Jack?
Did you send him an email?
Yes, I sent him an email. Oh, he's waiting to get in.
That's where Jack is.
There.
There's Jack right there. He's been waiting to get in.
He's been waiting to get in. It didn't give me a update thing. It was just he was hidden in the weight room.
Oh, hello, Jack.
Hello. How we doing?
Hey,
Good,
Jack, how are you?
Hello, Jack.
Good.
I like to see that since the last time we've talked to you, I've watched some of your interviews and catching you on the gram there with your Celtics podcast.
Yeah,
but I'm glad that you have not changed the black void that is behind you.
The goddamn noise
this
cancelated.
This is forever. This stays with me.
Between that and Bobby's like 1980s apartment that's been painted 50 times behind him and no decorations, this is a hell of a look on this show. Bobby, meet Jack. Bobby. Bobby's joining the show with us lately.
Hello, Jack.
Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you as well.
Jack obviously has been with us quite a few times, still with CLNS, heavy. You still doing the Charlotte stuff too?
I've stepped back from that a little bit. I'm mainly heavy Celtics blog right now. Those are the two.
Just interviewing the big names in Boston sports with Grant Williams, and the list ends there, even though I know you have a couple more on there. We'll give you time to plug your shit at the end of the show. Jack, I got a lot to get to. We haven't talked to you since the collapse against the Warriors, and the Celtics have had, just in a couple weeks of a first regular season, a pretty interesting start to the regular season. I'm going to kind of skip over the Udoka stuff. We'll touch on a little bit, but the injuries between Gallinari and Robert Williams started the season off, but then you get off to a hot 3-0 start. Jayson Tatum, now you're in top 3 for MVP votes. Let's start there. Your thoughts on Jayson Tatum averaging 31, 7, and 4, 38 behind the 3, living at the free throw line, and taking on defensive challenges like Ja Morant the other night, 0 for 4, 2 blocks against Ja. Your thoughts on Tatum to start the year?
Yeah, I mean, you usually don't see this Jayson Tatum until February. He's known for the slow starts. I was actually looking at his stats through the first 10 games or whatever, because I was writing about, just Tatum for like a post-game article randomly. So I was looking at, when's the last time he averaged like not 30% from the field for the first 10 games of the season. It was a slow start last year, but it's kind of like on and off, kind of like the Red Sox, right? Like the worst ever one year, then they're great the next year. That's kind of been Tatum. So this is his really good through the first 10 games year, I suppose. And yeah, like you said, he's in MVP conversations right now. And I think if the Celtics continue to be towards the top of the East and he continues to average these numbers, which I don't know how sustainable 30 points is, because there are a lot of players averaging 30 points right now because offense is up. I think probably with the way the Celtics and Joe Mazzulla have run the offense, it's possible, because he's getting a lot of easy looks, and he's getting more looks than ever just off of cuts and off of layups, which he wasn't getting last year. So maybe it's possible if you look at those. But if he continues to average, 28 to 30 points, 7 to 4, I think he'll be in those conversations, especially if the Celtics stay up there. I think Giannis right now has to be the favorite just because the Bucks are dominant and he's putting up crazy numbers again. But I'd say him, Luka, Tatum, Ja Morant, and Donovan Mitchell are probably top 5 for me right now. So Tatum's definitely in the mix.
Do you want him to win for the panel? Do you want him to win MVP? Wouldn't it be? No, they named the MVP before the playoffs or first round of the playoffs or somewhere around there in the NBA, right? So like it in the playoffs. Wouldn't you want a motivated Jayson Tatum if they give it to Luka? Luka wins it. The Mavs are probably another first or second round exit. Celtics should be in the mix for getting out of the East. Don't you want a pissed off?
Just want motivation. Yeah, motivation.
At least everything Tatum said, he sounds like he's motivated. He's saying all the right things. So I don't even know if the award would mean much to him if you go off the quotes that he's had recently.
How much money do you get? How much money do you get for MVP? That's the only motivating factor that he's in. Because obviously, when he didn't get All NBA, he was very pissed off about the money he didn't get. So maybe that's probably
his mama don't let him spend his NBA money, right?
They
She's raising that boy smart.
Mm-hmm.
Going after the Gronk method.
Yeah, exactly. To that point, first, I held my tongue on this, Jack, but how dare you compare Jayson Tatum to the Boston Red Sox, first of all? So I don't know, coming in hot there.
Not this year's Boston Red Sox.
You did mention Joe Mazzulla. Your overall thoughts, your initial thoughts on Mazzulla. He's had to look. I'll give you mine and I'll let you go. Obviously, it seems like the guys like him. You know, he's been revered in the organization for a few years now. Obviously, you know, Stevens and them like him in his basketball IQ, but he's had to deal with the Udoka stuff. It came rearing back with the Nets dumpster fire, just dragged him back into the mud in the mix. We had the comments from Marcus Smart, of course. But just from an on-court standpoint and an off-court standpoint, your thoughts on Mazzulla to start the season here?
I thought he's been good. I don't think was ever going to be easy for him. I mean, you're talking about throwing a guy in a situation where he's very clearly the second choice. He's very clearly, you know, I don't think he's necessarily the player's second choice, but obviously from what Marcus and Jalen said, they respected Udoka. And I mean, I think he's done a good job so far this season. I also think it's difficult because you have a lot of people complaining about the defense when he just doesn't have the same pieces to work with that Udoka did. You talk about having Robert Williams, and realistically speaking, it took Udoka half a season to figure out the defense, even with Robert Williams in the lineup, because they were terrible to start last year. And now you're talking about the Celtics with a pretty average defense. It's getting back around to top 10 in the league. I think over the last 5 or so games, they've been towards that top 10 in the league status, which they were last season, because you have to consider offense is just up around the league as well.
They're 17th right now with they're giving up 114, you know.
It's getting back there.
They were giving up 125, 130 to start the year. So
they're clawing their way back, and I think he's actively trying to make adjustments with that. Like, you've seen him put Grant in the starting lineup a couple times. Not saying that's the answer, just saying like he's trying different combinations.
Here he goes again. He goes again.
You know, I had to bring up Grant.
He's got his jersey on underneath that sweater. Like, every day he wears it like a wife beater, like you guys.
The more important thing to note, I think, that a lot of people seem to be, I don't want to say glossing over, but not focusing on as much because they're looking at the negatives, is the offense is the best offense in NBA history right now. Like the offense is running completely smoothly, and you got to give credit to Malcolm Brogdon for coming in because he's obviously a big piece, Sam Hauser's emergence, but you also have to give Joe Mazzulla credit for putting them into place to play that way, because they're playing faster, they're emphasizing the three more, but when they're not taking threes, they're cutting to the basket and they're taking open layups and they're running. Like, the offense looks really, really good. And until they get Robert Williams back and until they figure out how they want to play defense, because you see them experimenting with like drop coverage, throwing Horford back. You see Cornette doing his little 3-point jump thing, which is funny. But until they do that, they have the offense to kind of fall back on. And I think that's super important. So I'm happy with Joe so far. You heard a quote from Jalen last night saying that I don't always want to talk after the game, but Joe tells me, no, you're going to talk to me. And I appreciate that. So you got to, like, he's building a good rapport with the locker room, and they've known him for years. So I think it was the best choice. You've obviously heard Brad Stevens with Grossbeck say how confident they are in him. I think he'll be good with the Celtics and good in this spot as the head coach until they start losing. And right now they're 8-3. So there's not really much to complain about outside of the defense, which again has picked it up.
Yeah, and that's not just green team hyperbole from Jack there and the best offense ever. They are technically on pace offensive rating wise at 118 to be the best ever. Right now, as it stands, it was the COVID Nets at 117.3, if I have that right, with the best offensive rating. And they're cooking, and it's not just Tatum. To your point, they're running, man. Like, that was the first thing I noticed. Game one, right away, they're getting out. They're getting out on the break and moving. And I think the biggest guy that benefits is Tatum, for sure, getting some easy buckets, but that's Jalen's game, man. You know, the offense doesn't slog down the other side, and you can get him out on the break. That's good for both your superstars. Let's dial it back a little bit, a few weeks. We'd never got your thoughts unless you read Jack regularly, just on the whole Udoka fiasco. I don't know how deep you want to go into, like, his transgressions, just slinging around the old Celtics organization there. But do you think that it was handled correctly? How much of an impact do you think it has on the team currently? And now that the Nets have passed on him, I can't imagine him coming back up in job conversations across the league. Can he just go away for the year, or is it looming over this team when they go on their first 4-game skid Udoka's still there in the wings if he's suspended and whatnot.
I think there will obviously be people who bring it up just because they like complaining, and that's kind of what they do. Like a lot, like on Twitter, you see these people who Celtics win by 40 and they complain because somebody shot 2 of like 9 from the field. Like they'll just find things to complain about, and that's like an easy one to cherry pick. I was happy with the way the Celtics handled it because obviously the first reports came out and said, Udoka had a consensual relationship, and I thought that was really irresponsible reporting from Woj and Shams. Just, I mean, like, how you can't put that word out there and then just immediately pull it back and say, actually, maybe it wasn't, because like that's such an important. Like,
they also
like
had to. They had to have got that from the Udoka side, right? So like,
they had to get it from
not
somewhere.
to bounce that off the Celtics is crazy.
Yeah, and not to go on like, because I don't want to go too in depth on it because it's been like whatever dredged up time and time again, but the incessant need to be first with the news led to some very irresponsible reporting on it, which in turn made the Celtics look bad, which in turn led to, Stephen A. Smith and national television broadcasts talking all this stuff about how the Celtics are irresponsible. Even the other week, you had, I think it was Jalen Rose go on the air saying, the woman's name needs to be out there too. And then he immediately had to pull it back because he realized, well, maybe that was dumb because it wasn't a consensual relationship. Like the way
newsflash, guys, in no organization ever is it okay for the leader of the organization to go sleeping with subordinates, especially wives of subordinates.
No, and like,
come on, like, people
making unwanted comments, making unwanted advances, like all this came out, and the way the reporting was handled was bad. I think the Celtics handled it really well. They hired a legal team, and you can be mad that the details aren't out because obviously the players are frustrated, and I understand, Marcus Smart, obviously Jaylen Brown making comments. I understand the frustration because they don't know. They're in the dark just as much as the rest of us. And from our perspective, it's pretty easy to disconnect from Udoka because we don't have a relationship with him. We've never met him. He's just a coach of the team. And now that we know, or, reportedly that he did these things, we can just kind of, cast him off and say, okay, that's gross. Goodbye. Get away from the Celtics organization. But for Smart and Brown, who built this relationship with him for a year, they've known him. They went to the finals with him. The first time they went to the finals was with this coach who they're probably friends with and close with at this point. For them to kind of be left in the dark as to, okay, what exactly did he do? Why can he go coach another team but not us? I understand that frustration. But from the Celtics perspective, they did everything by the book of a business, because you have to remember, at its core, the Celtics are a business. So they hired a legal firm. They said, okay, figure this out. What happened? Tell us what to do. And then they couldn't really say anything after that because it wasn't in their hands anymore. It was in the hands of a legal matter.
Yeah, I would just say, after we bid adieu to you, Jack, we're going to talk about the Bruins fiasco. You look at the way they handled their shit and the way the Celtics did is like, Celtics waited till they had their ducks in a row. They came out, they made their press conference, they made their release, and now they've basically shut up ever since. Where I think they did make a misstep is letting the Nets talk to Udoka and letting that be a possibility, because that led to the Marcus Smart. Well, why can't he coach somewhere else? He can't coach here, and we don't know what's going on. I'll just say to him and to Jaylen Brown, and we can pair this with his comments on Kyrie Irving. Grow up, kids. Like, grow up. All right, fine. He was your buddy and you made a connection, and I get that. And it's hard emotionally, especially in that type of environment, in professional sports, to let that go. It's really intense. I get that. But come on. The guy, he's your head coach of an NBA basketball team. He's sleeping around the whole organization. He let you guys down. The organization didn't let you guys down. He did. And I think that's being, at least from the comments, they're not really seeing that eye to eye. And I'll just pair that with Jaylen Brown coming out in the last couple of days talking with Kyrie Irving, the latest Kyrie Irving debacle, calling it a mistake. Jaylen Brown came out and said basically Kyrie made a mistake. He's not an anti-Semite, and basically give him a pass is essentially what Jaylen Brown said. Both VPs of the Player Association. Fuck Kyrie Irving. I think we all know our stance on that. I think the whole world stances on that, except for the NBA players, apparently. Any opinion on this, Jack?
I mean, LeBron just tweeted about it too. I don't know if you saw that. He said, I think what Kyrie did was, wrong, obviously, but I think not letting him play is a step too far. And I mean, I've said this in other places. I think what Kyrie did was stupid. And I don't think Kyrie's a bad person. I just think he's lost. And that's the best word I have for it. Like, I just think he gets too clingy to these conspiracy theories, and he goes out and he says stuff that I agree with. Like, I agree that I don't think he's an anti-Semite. I just think he's too stubborn to just apologize because he realized, like, after he made a mistake. Like, he did something that was clearly wrong. He promoted a movie that was clearly wrong. And then instead of just apologizing and owning it, similar to what Jalen Rose did after he made the stupid Udoka comments, he refused to back down because he's stubborn and so stuck in what he thinks he believes in. Do I
what
think
he
the
thinks he believes in is the key,
exactly
is the key way to phrase that. And here's sorry, go ahead.
No, you go.
No, he's a pea brain. Okay, let's stop. He's a moron. Let's stop. I've called him every word under the sun, but at the end of the day, he's just an idiot. He's just a moron. You can't, he can't, and he digs himself his own holes. I agree with you. And the other side of the Kyrie conversation from the supporters is always, well, look what he's done for charity and for the, and that's all true. Millions of dollars in community work. Mm-hmm. I don't think morally he's corrupt, but Jesus, is he an asshole? He is one of the biggest, diarrhea out of his mouth. Just freaking he can't control a spotlight, and he because of his talent, he gets it. And the fact that he can't understand that and his lack of self-awareness is so broad, it's infuriating.
Yeah.
So maybe Jaylen Brown gets that. Maybe he, and he's trying to just speak to the core of. And
the players are going to stand up for each other. Like they're going to defend each other. That's just because that's the point of the Players Association. They're going to back each other up. And as far as the requirements for him to come back on the court, I think all of them are fine. I was listening to the Front Office Show podcast, which I listened to, and they made a good point saying that you probably can't force him to donate money, because that kind of you can't fine somebody more than a certain amount, so you probably can't force him to pay that much money. But other than that, he made a mistake. He had ample chances to just say, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it, and he didn't. And so that's what led to this. And I agree with it from that perspective. The players are going to defend the players. That's what it is. But like you said, at the press conference, everyone talks about 2 minutes prior to him having to talk about this, he said, I'm grateful to have a platform where I can influence millions. And then when he's asked about the influence in the promotion of this movie, he says, people don't have to listen to what I say. Like you said, I think he means well. I think he's probably a good person. And he, like you said, he does all this great stuff, but he just digs himself in the hole, and he can't get himself out of this stuff.
Yeah, I won't give him good person. I'll just say I don't think he's morally corrupt. And we can leave it there. I forget that was point I was going to make, but that's probably enough. On the Players Association, they have to, with Joe Asai, that's not bargained. He can't just make his players do whatever he wants them to do. It has to fall within what was collectively bargained in terms of penalties and stuff like that. So sure, you can't, even that, you can't take a guy's livelihood away, even though he's probably part of the woke cancel culture. And no offense, Jack, I know you're on the younger side, but when's the last time we took, so many 26-year-old fucking worldview opinions so seriously? I'm still a moron. 10 years ago, I was a bigger
moron. Huge
moron. I was a bigger moron. Trust me. So all that being said, speaking of morons, just your thoughts on Marcus Smart. Come
on, man.
He's the bane in my existence, but he's been playing well. He has stretches. He's had 10+ assists the last 3 games. Can he be the linchpin that he needs to be in his role for the whole season? Is this the year? Is this the year? I think he got basically to Game 5 of the NBA Finals last year and finally turned back into a pumpkin. Can he hold off this year?
Yeah, no, like you said, he's been playing well. He's averaging north of 10 assists over his past 3 games. He's averaging 7 assists on the season, which would be a career high, and less than 2 turnovers. So in terms of point guard play, there's not really a question anymore. He's a point guard, and he's a good point guard at that. He's one of 4 players in the league averaging 7 assists and less than 2 turnovers. And one of the others is Chris Paul. So that's pretty good company if you're a point guard. The shooting's not there.
Bobby, quick question. If you know Chris Paul very well, has he ever won an NBA championship?
That's a no.
Well, another is Fred VanVleet. So I'll give you that one.
Fred VanVleet.
I'll put you in a headlock.
Chris Paul has the same amount of NBA championships.
Yes.
No, he's been playing well. The shooting's not there, and I'll put it this way: if you're expecting Marcus Smart to shoot 40% from 3, it's not going to happen. He's never going to.
I would like to expect him not to shoot in the fourth quarter at all. That's what I'd like. That's what I'd like to expect.
My philosophy has always been, and I'm sure I've said this here before, if you get a shot within the flow of the offense, you have to take it, especially in this Celtics offense. And I think he's done a better job of cutting back on the quick shots. I think most of those are going to Derek White, Sam Hauser, Grant Williams, the Jays. I think they're getting most of the opportunities, and Malcolm Brogdon, who's been great this year. But I think he's done a good job of playing within his role. He looks great. I don't think he's going to average 10 assists throughout the season. Obviously, this is a great run he's on, but I do think he could average 7.5 assists or whatever. Cut back on his 3-point attempts, which he went through a slump at the start of the season, but over the last few games, he's been hitting them a little bit better, which is all you can ask from him. And I think he's played his role really well in terms of getting the ball to Jayson and Jalen and finding them in the correct spots. I think the defense too, obviously.
9 years into the season, into his career, we're finally establishing Marcus Smart as his role. All right, in closing, from one of your favorites to next, the biggest surprise on the Celtics or X Factor, however you want to describe it. I gave you a couple names here between, you mentioned them just now, Jack, Hauser, Brogdon, Grant Williams, Derek White. I'll go to the panel. We have Bobby. I don't know how much Celtics you've been watching lately, but if you have a thought on this, any, I know we haven't heard from you here, and then we'll close it out with Jack. Just surprise players, X Factors, any guys that you like coming off the bench, Winley, or your thoughts on that?
Yeah, my biggest thought is we talked about them playing fast break basketball, but they're also basically playing 8 guys. Is that sustainable? The one thing that my biggest surprise is they're playing like a playoff rotation. Their starters play 30 plus. Everybody else just spells, and they basically don't play the floor without 3 or 4 starters on there. And to me, that's probably my biggest surprise. So is that sustainable, or do they have to kind of get some more minutes here to other players?
Jack?
I think you're right. I think that's a big concern. I've heard throughout Twitter and just people I've talked to, especially with Al Horford, because you heard coming into the season he's going to not play back-to-backs, and he hasn't, but he's been playing a lot of minutes. I think the issue is, who do you play? Because you don't really need more depth at the guard position. And I think a lot of people are clamoring for Peyton Pritchard. But if you go into the center rotation, Luke Cornett's been good. I think he's actually been a pleasant surprise. Noah Vonleh's had the struggles with the fouls. And Blake Griffin, you can just tell, is kind of a step slow, but he's good locker room presence at the very least. You just don't really have the depth at the wing, which is where I think you really kind of need it. And that's why you're seeing more Sam Hauser, who, spoiler alert, he's been the biggest surprise. I mean, that dude doesn't miss. It's very fun.
So pure.
It's so crazy. So I was at the Garden last night. The crowd was just so, every time he made a shot, it was just erupting. It was fun. But
dude, white boy from 3, you kidding me? Boston wet dream right there.
Pritchard last year, now Hauser, you got it all.
Yeah.
No, yeah, the depth. I don't want to say it's necessarily a problem, but I do think you could kind of see the issues that come from it later in the season. Is there a fix? I don't know. A lot of teams are playing their guys a lot of minutes. You've seen Toronto does it a lot. But I guess we'll see later in the season. I think Tatum and Brown will be fine with it because they're younger. Horford is where I start to get worried.
Would you, 2 questions here, and then we'll let you go, Jack. Would you pin that as something that snuck up on them last year when they got to the finals, the minutes? Udoka, same way. First year coach, had to get those guys back on track. He rode that 8-man rotation all year last year. Finally got them on track, obviously, towards the second half. But do you feel like fatigue set in with their key players at the end? And then in terms of a fix, like, I know this isn't a big deal. It's not going to make a huge deal, but they got a $3 million exemption from the Gallinari injury. You have some free agents out there at the center position. Not all of them are the most popular names, the Boogie Cousins, the Dwight Howards, you're talking about guys that 12 minutes at most, but can they bring some back of their old, from their prime? Do you go that route? Because I'll give you Luke Cornett blocking a shot from the block down in the post, but Blake Griffin's not going to give you anything there. Robert Williams is expected back, sure, but Jesus, can you really rely on Robert Williams? And I love Al Horford probably more than anybody, but at 37 years old, trust me, those knees and ankles don't hold up over the course of. I can barely walk up the stairs. I don't know how Horford's doing it. So, your thought on the front court there?
Yeah, no, I think, and this has been my stance even throughout the summer when everyone was looking at the bigs, I think the bigger issue is the wings. You have Horford, you have Cornett as the backup right now, and he'll kind of transition into being the third string once Robert Williams is back. I mean, you know, I was going to say you have Grant Williams who can guard big guys. He's smaller, but he can do it. And then Vonleh too, who can give you a couple minutes here and there. But at the wing, you really have Jaylen Brown, Jayson Tatum, Sam Hauser, and then nothing, right? Justin Jackson's your next actual wing off the bench, and he's not going to get real minutes. The issue comes is there's no real guys on, you know, in free agency at the wing position who you'd feel comfortable bringing in. And the disabled player exception is only 3.2 mil. I was talking to, or Keith Smith put out an article for Celtics blog talking about how it's less of a useful thing and more of just a tool to have in the toolkit, because like, there's no real guys you can get for 3.2 million that are going to make an impact. And he made a good point. He said that the one place where it can become useful is by the time you get to the buyout season, when players start to get bought out by their teams, those salaries are prorated, which is like they're lessened because, you know, you pay them for the rest of the season. But the Celtics will have this extra money, so they can offer more than other teams. So maybe they'll have an edge in buyout season. But other than that, I don't see the disabled player exception playing a big role. The only real place I think they could make a move is if they trade Peyton Pritchard, or they trade one of these bench guys with one of the TPs they have for 5-6 mil. And even then you're talking about like, I mean, a guy I looked at is Kenrich Williams on the Thunder, who's a solid defender and he can play the wing. Other names that have been thrown out, I know Mo Harkless got bought out. That's a name I've seen thrown around. There were others too, but none of them are going to be guys that'll give you 20 minutes coming in, giving you 10 minutes off the bench at the wing position. I think could be useful. But the big difference, not to go on a rant here, but last year in the finals, I think they had 7 guys who they trusted. Before it was Daniel Tice, Aaron Nesmith, the rest. Right now they have 7 guys, plus they brought in Brogdon, plus Sam Hauser's playing minutes, plus they have Cornette who can play actual minutes, who they trust a little bit more. So it's not much else, but I think throughout the course of the season, having the extra guys who you trust in the playoffs is going to play a big role.
I agree with you. Goddamn, Gallinari would look good in this team.
Yeah. He'd be very fun. He's the
missing guy.
Yeah.
The one thing I'm not glad he got hurt, obviously, but I don't think Sam Hauser would have gotten the chances he got if Gallinari was here. So
you're right. That's actually a good point.
Yeah.
And he's been super fun. And the Celtics have been really hesitant to let guys like that kind of come through the system the last few years. So good thing he got off to a hot start, or probably would have got buried.
Yes, I agree.
Jack, thanks so much. Always fun talking to you. Take a minute here, pitch your stuff. Let us know where we can find all of the latest from you, and we'll let you go.
Yeah, writing at Celtics blog and heavy.com. I host a podcast called the How About Them Celtics podcast, that as well. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Those 2 things in that podcast. And I host a podcast also, the Simone NBA show, which is where you saw the Grant Williams interview earlier this summer. Had Muggsy Bogues on the podcast too. That was pretty cool. But
right on, man.
Working on that stuff. But yeah.
Average height. Muggsy Bogues.
Keep questioning. Exactly. If you ever want some moderate to less than intelligent opinions, we're happy to join at any point in time. But we appreciate you jumping on with us, and enjoy the day, man. Thanks.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you guys for having me. See you later.
Jack.
Jack. He's going places.
Sweet Jack.
Sweet Jack. Mm-hmm. I think he's in his 20s, though. Do you think he took offense from my everyone in their mid-20s is an idiot comment?
No.
I meant everybody except for Jack.
He's not soft.
His general tone after that was different.